Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, president of Fidelis Wealth Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning. We are here today with Stacey Linderman. She is the founder of A6 Financial and Business Optimization. And I'm so excited to talk with Stacey today. She has I just love anyone that has the word optimization in their title because it means that they are all about being efficient and effective and processes. And I'm excited about those sorts of things because I'm that sort of a geek. So Stacey, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on the show. I'm a fan and I listen to a great deal of your podcast. It's my go-to list for the gym.
Oh, I love it. And we've got some amazing women on here. Thank you so much for joining. So my very first question is always, I'm a reader. I love books. Tell me what your favorite book is.
Oh, if you ask me every 6 months, it's something different. But right now, I'm a huge fan of The Black Sheep Sales by Alicia Barr.
Uh-huh.
It is spot on for me right now where I am in my life and in my journey. She's fabulous. She has a podcast also, and I kind of been listening and to her for a while. And then she came out with this book and it is just great. So one of the points of the book is about daring to do things differently.
Oh, I love that.
And being comfortable with yourself. And I really am unapologetically me. I'm unapologetically not boring for CFO services. And her book really fit with me. So she does talk a lot about sales and how if it's a fit, it's a fact, and that sales doesn't need to be a dirty word. So if you're a business development professional, the book is great. But if you're also a business owner or even someone that works at a company and feels that they do things just differently and they question whether they need to change their approach, this book is for you also.
Oh, I love that. You know, I spent a lot of time in financial services where you wear dark clothes. There's not a whole lot of individuality or I felt like for a lot of years that I had to even, hide how many kids I had because it just didn't fit into the traditional business role. And I love the idea of being authentic and being genuine and being able to present yourself as your whole self. I think that sounds great. I love that book.
Yes. We could really touch on what you said about not feeling comfortable talking about your kids or your marriage or even anything personal outside of the office as a female. And so, the book is a must read.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to put it on my list. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Stacey. Tell me about how you got where you are today and just a little bit about what you do.
Okay. One of the things I love about your podcast is that it's not the traditional tell me your elevator speech and what you do for a living. And for me, talking personal, as I just said, about being a female leader in the work, it wasn't always welcome, or I was just afraid to do it. But now at this stage in my life, this is exciting for me. It's very different for me to step out and to talk about myself and the journey. So I live right now in New Jersey, but I grew up in Philadelphia. The kind of like if you picture the Rocky movie with the row homes, that's sort of where I grew up. I grew up in the greater Northeast area. And I'm not saying it was a dangerous neighborhood, but it wasn't definitely probably the safest either. And I'm really sharing now. So, you hear recently, I've heard the expression about food insecurity over the last so many years. And this light bulb went off. Like that was us.
Mm-hmm.
But that we were not concerned with the fancy clothes and competing with the neighbors or what we were going to get for a holiday gift. We were happy to have a roof over our head and we were happy to have food on the table. And food insecurity is a real thing. But like, if you look at me today or my family or how we present ourselves in the work environment, I don't think people really would understand
Where
like
your roots came from.
where I came from, like where we came from. Me and my sister are just now at this middle age stance in our life, are started talking about stuff more like, oh wow, that was crazy, or that was dangerous, or that was, I mean, my middle school was one of the first middle schools to have metal detectors in the Philadelphia area. My high school, I will talk now with like my own kids. I have two, and they're at that age. My son is 13, my daughter's 15. Something else I normally never share. You know, you went through this career journey and you didn't talk about it, that my daughter has this hoko dance. And I was saying, I never heard of a hoko dance. And my husband's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, like they're like, it's the dance where you're welcome back. And they talk, and I'm like, what are we talking about? So I reached out to some of my friends from high school that I'm still so close with. And I'm like, did we have a hoko dance? Am I blocking this out? And they're like, no, what? Like it wasn't like it is today.
Mhm.
There was no welcome back dance. There was no, like, it was a very different educational experience. And then I honestly never thought about college. Like,
Mhm.
you just thought you're going to come out and you're going to get a job. And then probably in the middle of my senior year, I was like, I'm going to go to college. And my parents were like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm going to go to college. And they're like, it was like, you can't go to college. You'll get a job. And I was the first generation to go to college. I couldn't even say the first female. It was like the first generation to go to college.
Yeah.
And of course, and I went 1 year full time.
Mhm.
And that was pretty much the most I could afford. And like, plus loans. And my mom just, oh my God, my mom is a saint. She worked like around the clock to put food on the table and keep the family together, and just saint. And she did all she could to help me,
Yeah.
even though she thought it was ridiculous that I wasn't getting a job. But yeah, like she'll say now, I don't know why I wasn't more supportive. It makes sense. But at the time she was like, what are you talking about? Maybe you'll go to secretarial school. What? And so I went 1 year full time, and then at the end of that year, I got a full time job for the summer, and then they paid for me to continue my education, which was like such a blessing. Most of my employers paid for my education, and by the time I started out my associates, and I got my undergrad, and then I got my master's degree. Almost 14 years in night school.
Wow. That is an accomplishment, isn't it? That's huge.
Yes, my
Very.
education means a lot to me. It's great. But I think it means a lot to you when you're paying for it and when you're working full time the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
And going to night school. And, and looking back on it, now that we're talking about it, it wasn't that I just worked full time. I worked full time, and I bartended 2-3 nights a week, and I went to night school 3 nights a week. And I studied on the last night or two. But yeah, it took a full-time job and a half to just maintain, to pay your rent and to
get through school. That's crazy. Did you end up without student loans then when you came out, or did you have student loans?
I didn't. I had no student loans. You're absolutely right, because I had paid off my student loans as I was working. And when I graduated, I didn't have any.
That's amazing.
I didn't have any. When you're in the master's level, tax wise, you can only take a certain amount of classes, as you probably know, and then you had to pay the taxes. But I paid the taxes like through my check as I was going.
Uh-huh. So what did you go to school for? Did you know when you started college what you wanted to be?
I thought I did. I wanted to be a paralegal. And I went to paralegal school and I got my associates and my certification. And then I decided, I'm going to be capped in this. I'm never going to go I was working as a paralegal, and I was actually overseeing 30 other paralegals as like a facilitator of the operations and workflow. And I thought, this is the highest level I'm going to be here.
Mhm.
Like I'm not going to get any higher. So I decided to go to law school. And so I got my undergrad in sort of like English and humanities, and to go to law school. And I went for 1 year. And at that point, I was already doing finance work. So I run a CFO and retainer company now. And I was a CFO for 25 years before I jumped down and went on my own. But I was doing finance and budgeting and I loved it. And so I
Of
had
course,
this,
as
you know,
everyone does.
as everyone does. I love the numbers. I literally like it's embarrassing. I just walk around
Yeah.
just running numbers in my head. That is true. It's like I do really love them. And so I thought I loved the contract piece. And I grew up watching LA Law and I thought I want to be a
Yeah.
paralegal. I want to do that. And so as I'm reading contracts and studying the law, like I do like the law, but that's not what I want to do for a living. So that was a time in my life where I was really brave. I just went, I don't want to do this. I don't want to get out and do billable hours. And this isn't my passion. I'm now a director of budgets at like a university, and I'm playing with numbers all day long. And I'm like it came natural to me, but I didn't have a lot of schooling in the area, so I went back and got my MBA in accounting.
Oh, wow, that is crazy. Well, no wonder you spent such a long time in school because you did
I had
3
the year of law
separate.
school. Yes,
Yeah, you had
yes,
3 separate careers in that time. That's so interesting. I love that you
yes.
love numbers, fellow geeks, we tribe together for sure. What
Oh my God, yes. I can tell you stories.
Stacey, what is the best investment you've made in yourself? If you can look back over your journey and kind of say, you know what, I'm so glad I did that. I just would not have ended up today if I hadn't have tried that.
Probably my education. And I don't mean my education necessarily the journey I just told you about the years of schooling. But when I was done school, I invested some time and resources into, lifelong learning like we all do, but through leadership development programs
Oh,
and
that's
learning about myself and my organization and how to be a better leader and a better manager and empathy and the Enneagram. I studied that. And so I went through a program called Women in Leadership. And I always like give them positive reviews and talk about the program. But that was a changing moment for me
mhm.
where I felt started to be more comfortable in my skin as like a female leader and to say, oh, I'm going to lean into this. I'm going to own this. So that was an investment that it was sort of like life changing. We talked for a second about different chapters, and I think that opened a new chapter for me.
So you went from just doing the work to now leading a team or a company or something along like.
Yes, I was like, I needed to be an executive to actually even get into that program, but I was leading and I was leading under the umbrella of treat people the way you want to be treated or that was, but I don't think I heard myself like maybe how harsh I was coming off or how straightforward I was coming off or that people had different people. I'm not really a feeling centered person. People have different feelings and they react to things differently. And how I'm motivated may not be how other people are motivated. And I learned a lot about leveraging strengths. And it's something that is incorporated into the fabric of my company and with our
Mhm.
clients today. That you may not be great at this, but you are great at this. And why are we putting so much focus on the things I can't do rather than the things I can do?
Yeah. Oh, you are preaching to the choir there. I ended up just doing a presentation just recently on that, like building a company culture. And we lean into those idea of play to your strengths. And I love
Yes.
Simon Sinek's sort of, develop people. And we're a community of people with different needs. So I love that. I
Yes.
love that you deliberately took the time to learn those leadership skills, and especially where like numbers come naturally. Some of those leadership things maybe didn't come naturally, but you took the time to develop.
Well, yeah, and to understand that numbers are not everyone's thing. Right? And that's okay. Like the business owners I deal with, they're absolute experts in their space and their vertical. They don't need to be experts in the financials. Now, some of them are. Some of them are brilliant and they on every level, and they just don't have time to do it. But yeah, to just, why am I the one writing for the team when this person's a better writer? Just say.
Yeah.
I really, it was a really a great experience and stuff that I continue to use today. But I think anything, any investment in your just helping you be more of a balanced person or being comfortable in your skin, going back to my book recommendation, is just great.
Mm-hmm. What about the worst advice someone gave you? Did you ever get some really bad advice and did you take it or did you not? Tell me about that.
Um, yeah, this is a good one. This is a good question. Probably to conform. Oh, just go along with what they said. Oh, just keep your mouth shut. Just, oh, well, don't say anything, just keep marching, keep following. As a finance person, especially, the C-suite level, there's times where it's like, well, I know that's not right. Or, we're not really telling the truth or the full story. And it's like, there was an ethical stuff almost that me of today, no, my integrity means everything to me. And I won't be quiet in terms of injustices or inequities, or just if our owners hire us to tell them the truth. They want to know. They don't want us to blow smoke at them when we're doing an organizational assessment. They really want the truth. And if they don't want the truth, then we're just not the company for them. And there probably is someone else out there better for them. I've just been really fortunate to have owners that want to be challenged and they want to get to the next level, and we challenge each other. We could go back and forth and discuss something. But I think to just, leave it to the men, leave it to a different, just agree with them, maybe would have been not advice that I would give.
Did you have a hard time going against that advice when you were younger and just starting out? Because I found that a lot of times, like, we grow into being authentic and to speaking up, and sometimes it's a skill that we learn over time. Were you?
I think that I always spoke up. And but I don't think that, which could have been the death of me, right? But I don't think that I knew how to do it in a polished and professional way, which I learned through the leadership development. Like, I wasn't someone that had a hard time giving difficult feedback. And I wasn't someone that had a hard time saying to even someone that was 2-3 levels ahead of me, oh, let's discuss that. That's not the way. We can't report it that way, or we can't, or that's not fair to that employee. And there were times where I was like, oh my God, just be good. Like, don't share that. I've gotten better at sharing it with a little more polish.
I love that. You still get your point across. You just maybe do it with a little bit more tact.
Yes.
Yes. I could probably benefit from some of those courses.
We all can, right? Like, continuous. I still hear myself say something, or I read an old email that I sent like 6 months ago or not. And I'm like, oh, that came off harsh. And I wasn't in a bad mood. It wasn't meant to be harsh. It's just, I would say it, boom, in, out.
Yeah.
And I think it needed a little more couching.
I love that. What about regrets? If you look back, and maybe you don't regret the action, but if you had known then what you know now, you would have handled that situation differently.
So this is a double-sided answer. Following my gut. Anytime I didn't follow my gut, like, you knew it was wrong, you knew it was problematic, your spidey sense was telling you that is just not right. So not following my gut has led me in the wrong direction. That being said, I really don't look at any missteps or even mistakes.
Mhm.
I don't want to make mistakes. I really, really don't. But looking back, right? Like nobody does. But looking back on them, I learned from every one of them and they made me the person I am today.
Mhm.
So being afraid to make any mistakes is not living. So
Yeah.
I don't necessarily regret the mistakes, but I do need to learn from them.
Is there any like
Yeah.
particular example you can share with us about just a time that maybe you didn't listen to your gut that you wish you would have?
Maybe doing a presentation or presenting financials or hiring someone that I thought, oh, I just don't know. And then we did it and I'm like, oh, I kind of knew that. Or speaking too loudly about something or not speaking loudly about something enough. Like you just learn.
Mhm.
You just learn. And having a title doesn't necessarily make you right. And not, you know what, another probably regret would be when I knew I had enough to leave sooner. Like I may have stayed someplace longer than I should have. And looking back on it, I wish I was like maybe braver earlier to make my next leap.
I've heard that one a couple of times and I am so set on I'm brave, I'm fearless. That's fearless females, right? So I'm fearless,
Oh, I'm
but I'm
telling you,
scared
that's
to
what
death.
sold me on your podcast title. Because looking back on my journey, just everybody has a story. I'm like, you know what? I am fearless. Like, wow, and I am super proud of where I am and what I've built and continuing to just get up every day, keep moving and keep going. Yes, yes, the fearless women. And maybe there was a reason I stayed longer in those situations than
Mhm,
looking back now. I'm like, oh, I could have cut that short a couple years. But it's maybe it's not an excuse, but I was raised differently.
mhm,
You got a job and you had benefits and you got that paycheck and you went in every day and you never called out and you did it. You just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And so I don't regret my 25-year experience in corporate America. I mean, it makes me qualified for what I do today. But if it's turning into a life sentence, I think, maybe questioning a little bit sooner am I on the right path? But I guess, now looking back on it now, it was so brave
yeah.
and fearless, the changes that I made. And then on the flip side, I could have done it sooner.
Yeah, it's a really fine line to walk, it really is. I've found that there are
Yes.
times when you have to say, "I can do hard things," and be a little bit fearless and try it and go out into that unknown, and there are other times where you just need a little bit more time before you can take that first step.
Yes.
What about if you could go back and talk to yourself at the beginning of your journey? What would you tell that 20-year-old or 21-year-old? What would you tell you?
You got this. Uh, that it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
I mean, she almost seems like a different person. Stacey of 20, Stacey of 30, Stacey of 15. Like we look back and we think like, oh, I see old pictures or whatever, and I recognize that person, but I don't know if I'm the same person
Mhm.
today. Like it almost feels like a different individual, but that you're stronger than you think you are. And
Mhm.
that life it's not, there's going to be rocky roads and you got it. Just keep plugging away and to trust yourself more. I don't know. I mean, maybe I did trust myself, but not as much as I trust myself today. And maybe that's just like a youth thing. One thing that my mom and sister say quite often, and it's become like a family motto for us, is this too shall pass. And I think that 20-year-old Stacey needed to know that because some stuff seems so massive in our life. And
Mhm.
you look back and you're like, that was a part of my journey. It does pass.
Mhm. Yeah, and you get to the other side and you can look back and say, those are some hard things I learned and some great things that I learned. And you take it into your journey going forward and what you, the person that you turn into comes from those series of experiences, the times that you were scared and did it anyway, or
Yes.
not sure. Yeah.
Yes.
What scared you the most when you started your career? Did anything scare you? It doesn't sound like anything scares you.
No, going back to the very beginning of our conversation, probably the food insecurity. Having a roof over my head, paying your electric bill, paying your car payment, being able to feed my family. Still to this day, it's not, am I going to be able to buy the most holiday gifts? It's, are we paying that bill? Are my kids secure? Do we have food on the table? Yeah, am I making the right financial decision? Am I being selfish, right, to make a change or to take a leap, or can we make this work as a family? I don't think you forget your roots. You don't get to a point where you're making a certain amount of money and you just forget what it's like to kind of be hungry.
Hmm.
So that does still scare me to this day.
Yeah. And I think that that we call it the money story, in financial advising, is you go back and kind of look at the money story you grew up with and trace it back to, the money story that your parents grew up with, and what did they pass on to you that you still believe. Because there are people that, like, we have these entrepreneurs that just borrow like crazy to get a business up and going. And they are very successful a lot of times, sometimes not.
Fearless, right? Fearless.
Yeah, they are. but 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 my particular money story goes back to depression and my grandparents. And so
Yes,
it's very
exactly.
difficult for me to get rid of the idea that debt is bad, in order
Hmm.
to grow that business and stuff like that. So I find it really interesting that is something that is so fundamental. It's developed at such an early age that it does follow you through.
Yes, and am I passing it on correctly? So I've had, close friends or my sister or whatever, say to me, my kids will be like, "Oh, we're at the, I don't know, Target," and it's like, "Oh, can I have, this whatever gum for $1?" And I'm like, you don't need that gum for $1." Like, whatever. And my sister will be like, "What did you just say to them? Like, why do you do that?" And I'm like, "Oh," so, or I say, "Well, that's not a good price for that," or "We can't afford that,"
Mhm.
or "Why would we spend our money on that?" And so part of it is, am I teaching life lessons? And another side of it is, am I pushing my insecurities onto them?
Yeah.
So I don't really know the answer to that question, but it is something that I think about.
Yeah, as my kids are a little bit on the older end. I've got 5 and my youngest just graduated from high school. Yeah.
That is amazing.
So, but as
All
I'm
right, that's so awesome.
it really is. It's super exciting. I'm really proud of them. But my youngest and all of them will come back to me and ask. I had my third son said just recently, he's like, "I feel guilty when I am not saving enough in my Roth IRA." And on
Ah,
one
I,
hand, I'm going, "Yes, good mom." And on the other hand, I'm like,
yes,
"You need to have some fun too and
a
buy that
balance. Hmm.
pack of gum and,
A
or
balance.
something."
I don't want them to feel guilty giving themselves a reward that they deserve.
Yeah.
I have 2 great kids that work so hard. But then there's times, I think, well, I had my first, like, and I say this to them. My daughter just is at the point where she's like, "Oh, we hearing this story again?" But I had my first job, I think it was like 9 years old, washing dishes in a kitchen, once in a while on the weekends. And then at like 11, I worked in an ice cream truck. And then by time 12, I don't know, McDonald's or Cinnamon Bun Place, and 13 or whatever. Like, you know, I remember my grandmom taking me on, oh God, me, it was like 3 different buses into the center city to get my working papers at like the youngest age you could get it. And because we worked and we contributed. And if you wanted something, you paid for it. Yeah. So I don't, I will say, like, "Don't you want a job?" And like,
Yeah. Yeah, I had two
And they
jobs.
both do stuff. My daughter's a dog walker and a babysitter, and my son will wash cars, and he works at my nephew, like his uncle's shop, and he does I mean, they both do so much, but I'm like, oh, don't you want a job? Yeah, and it's funny because I'll say stuff like, I remember being, I don't know, maybe 30 years old and saying something about 20 years work experience. And people were like, how's that even possible? And it was like, well, technically, it was.
Yeah.
Because we kind of as soon as we could work, we worked. It wasn't just, well, of course, you babysat and you any kind of side hustle, but you worked.
Yeah. 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 I remember I had two jobs all the way through high school. And so
Yep.
it is a different way of looking at things. And I haven't found the solution to that either. And I'm a financial advisor whose whole job is teaching people how to manage their money. So I think
Yes.
that is a learning experience as we financially parent our children. It's going to be an adventure, but it'll be a good one.
And I was always a saver. And it wasn't that I was saving thinking, oh, I want to buy a big, beautiful house. I was saving, oh, well, if I break a leg and I can't work the next couple of weeks, I was always
Yeah.
saving and preparing. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's so interesting. And I think a lot of, not just because we both love money and we love financials, but it's the money is at a heart of what a lot of us do.
Hmm.
And in terms of, people have difficulty talking about money.
Hmm.
And I've said this on other, conversations or shows or whatever, about that people don't always sit at the dinner table and talk about money. And I don't want it to be a taboo topic for my family, but I also don't want to stress my kids out.
Yeah.
Like they're worried about the next electric bill.
Yeah.
My fear is that I may be doing that, but
Well,
or at least I'm doing it in my head.
pretty resilient. And I always tell my kids, I'm like, that's how come they invented therapists. I'm like, I'm just helping you out with something to talk to your therapist about
Yes,
one
yes,
day.
yes, yes.
So, what about any unique challenges because you were a woman? Did you face any of those?
Yes, of course. But it probably wasn't until the last, I don't know, 10 years that you were even willing to talk about it. I think we all have our challenges, right? If you're heavy set, you have challenges. If you're overly thin, you have challenges. If you're very tall, you have challenges. If you're but diversity, color, ethnicity, religion, there's always I feel like a stigma. And in today's world, we're trying to do away with some of the stigmas, but sometimes it's predisposed and people think things. So yeah, I'm Jewish. There was stigmas around that. I'm blonde. I've always been lighter hair. There was stigmas around that. There was definitely stigmas about being on the thinner and smaller side and being a woman. And I was in a male dominated field. Most of my career, if I was sitting around a boardroom table, there was just say 20 men and I would be the only female. I didn't have a problem with being the only female, but there was not a lot of diversity. And I felt like women, I feel like sometimes are so generous in helping younger women. But when you get to a middle aged point or younger middle aged, and there's one seat around the table for a female, are you treating the other females equally? Or are they now your competition?
Hmm.
And are we kind enough to each other that we could be? I've been very fortunate with some really, really great leaders. I had one female boss, and I'm very honest right now. I have some really great female bosses. Great, great, great. I still stay in touch with today and I adore. I had one female boss that, because her journey was to, she flat out said, I'm going so personal now. I never disclose personal information. And as I was excited to be on this podcast, because I really was like, you know what, I'm at a point in my life, I'm going to lean in and I'm going to share this journey and experience. That she came right out and said, I chose to have a career over children.
Hmm.
And you have children, you're never going to put enough into your career. And it was always an issue.
Mhm.
She treated the men much better than she treated the women and would constantly remind, oh, well, that female, like that leader, we had other female leaders in the organization, and behind closed doors, she would be like, well, she can't really do the job because she has children. Or look at, she came in late probably because of her kids. I put my career I put having children in front of my career. And she would say, you work so hard and you're so, I guess she would say, great at what you do, but you're never going to be the best because those kids are always going to come first. And it was a problem and a stigma. Not saying I didn't get that from other male bosses.
Mhm.
I don't think it was as lay it on the table as with this one
Mhm.
female leader that is still out there leading. Yeah, I've had some experiences where you think, oh, I would never. Oh, I
Yeah.
can't imagine. I would like you learn from good influences and negative influences just
right.
as much, right?
Mhm. It's interesting that it doesn't sound like she pointed out that the males also had kids.
No, and if a man, I mean, me and my husband would like, I don't want to say joke about it, but we would talk about it. Like we were both executives at a certain level. And, and if I said, oh, I need to leave to pick up a sick kid at 4:30, it was, oh, there she goes. And if he said, I need to leave to pick up a sick kid, they'd be like, oh, he is such a good father. He is such a good guy. And so for the longest time when my kids were young and I was working in corporate America, if somebody had to come in late to drop off a child, it would be my husband. If someone had to leave early or take a kid to a doctor's appointment, it was safer for him to do it than it was for me. And we would discuss that as a couple. My husband's a brilliant, brilliant man. And he looks at women as equals and uplifts. And I mean, he's very inspirational to me and to so many people. But we would have that conversation and he would be
Mhm.
like, no, for you to leave, it's a death sentence.
Mhm.
You're not going to get that next promotion. And he saw it. He saw it. And just even simple things in like our household. Like I would say, like the house would be a mess or whatever. And I'd say, oh, I really want to get a cleaner. And this is years ago. I really want to get a cleaner, but I don't know. I feel guilty. And my husband would be like, you feel guilty to get a cleaner? He said, I don't feel guilty to get a cleaner. Why would you feel guilty to get a cleaner? And it was like he's not a person of a lot of words, but it was his way of saying, you're owning that label that you should be cleaning the house.
Yeah.
I don't feel guilty not to clean as a man. Why would you feel guilty? And it was like, oh, he's right. I am owning this old label.
I like that. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. I'm going to think on that because that is the way, a lot of times that I look at, well, I am the one I'm the caregiver. I'm the one
Yep.
who is the cleaner. I'm the one who is in charge of these things. And that's not necessarily the way it is actually. So,
No,
huh.
no. And that's not a quality because you're both working full time and you're contributing. And whether your husband stays home with the kids or you stay home with the kids, and I guess we do take on roles. We could talk about this topic all day, but like we just take on any role. Like, and I feel like I laugh. Like as soon as you do something and you show you're confident at it, you always do it. My husband, for example, does forms. Like he does all the health forms and all the camp forms and does all the forms. And when my kids go to college, he'll be doing the college forms, right? And because he's good at the forms, well, I labeled him with that because I don't want to do the forms. So I'm like, oh, you're better at the forms. So he does all the forms. So it's like, that's one of his jobs,
Yeah, I wish he'd come do my forms.
I hate the forms. And I'm like, oh, you're better at the forms. Like it's funny. Like we do. But are those roles because of gender or are those roles just because that's kind of how it played out?
Mm-hmm.
And I ask that question. And my daughter asked that question. She'll say, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Because I'm a female? And my son sort of has started asking it. He's in charge of the trash. He does the trash every Tuesday. And it's been years. Oh my God. He's been doing the trash since I think he was like 6 years old. I don't even know. And he'll say, why do I always have to do the trash? Because I'm a boy? It's like, I don't know. It just was his role.
Yeah. That's my younger daughters are really great at questioning those gender stereotype roles. My youngest daughter is actually best at working on cars. She's a really good mechanic, and none of her brothers are very good at being a mechanic. And so she's always questioning, how come I'm in charge of like
Fixing
preparing
something.
lunch or
Yes.
something like that, instead of going out and working on the car. So they're going to solve a lot of problems for us, Stacey. Those kids, they're going to be great.
I hope. Well, going back to our point about leveraging strengths. So if something breaks in the house or something, you're going to go to the daughter that's better at mechanic. Like, so we just do that. Like, we have that. Oh, well, you're better at whatever, the technology or the creative and I'll go, well, can you handle that? And it really is because I think that's the best person in the house to do it. But sometimes it does kind of fit the gender role, which I don't know if it just is a fluke or it was a predisposed thing.
Stacey, what is the thing that you are the most proud of?
Well, being fearless, right? Like stepping of saying, okay, I'm going to live through this. Okay, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to do this, even though I'm scared to death. And not saying I didn't have help. I'm very fortunate. Like my sister is, no matter what I do, is like, you got this. Oh, you got it. Yeah, you're fine. Like, and my mom, no matter what mistakes I make, she's like, you're fine. You're fine. Like, I have the best inner circle friends. People call them my squad. I think I'm proud of my company now. I really am. I'm so proud that I said I was going to walk away from this set salary of, it was a CFO and to say, I'm taking these services and I'm going to offer it. I'm going to share my gift and I'm going to offer it to the business owners that couldn't necessarily or didn't want to necessarily hire a full-time CFO. And they could have us on retainer. And to go back to Alicia Barr's book, it's being comfortable doing it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were told, wear the suit. I still wear a suit often just because I like a suit, but wear the suit and portray yourself this way and nod and agree and don't say too much and let the men talk. Like, just to do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we're a baby company. I mean, we've been around 6 years-ish. And I just can't even believe it. I still to this day, I'm like, I cannot believe how much we've grown and how stable we're doing and how, it just is a dream come true.
It's all that hard work too, all that prep and all those many years of learning and growing and showing up that allowed you to.
Yes, showing up.
Be fearless and take that step and be successful at it. So don't give yourself short shift.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Any advice for a young lady who's just starting down this path? If there's someone that's just on the beginning of her journey, is there something that you would tell her to help her be successful like you?
Stop worrying about the stuff you can't control. I had a boss, his name is Jim Tucker. Just a great leader and a super nice person. And I mean, he cared about the team professionally and personally. And he would challenge me, like he'd say, what do you want your legacy to be? And I would say, what? I'm thinking about the numbers. I'm not thinking about a legacy. He really pushed me out of my comfort zone. But he would say, why are you worrying about that? We can't control it. And I'd be like, well, this could happen and that could happen. And every scenario, right? And he really would reinforce it. Like what you're worrying is not going to help this situation. You're going to make yourself sick. And I think of him and his words like quite often. But yeah, that's something I wish maybe I met him earlier in life that the younger me would have, because I worry an awful lot. I inherited that from my mom. But I remember his words. And it's really, really true. You can sit and worry all day long and it is not going to change the outcome.
Mhm. I like that. I like that idea because I can list the 14 different worries we should be worried about right now.
Yes. Yes. And you worrying about it, I mean, you could take whatever action you could take, but you sitting and worrying about it is not going to change the outcome.
Stacey, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate our conversation. Thanks for taking the time to share with our listeners and just be real and lean into this experience. If I have listeners that are interested in getting in touch with you, how do they do that?
Well, I'm on Instagram. I'm a super like sort of personal. If we're doing a charity event or something, it's A6FinBiz. So it's A6FINBIZ. I'm on Facebook under Stacey Linderman, but I'm also on the company and LinkedIn. I didn't say LinkedIn first because I know that your audience, because I listen to you on a personal and professional level. I mean, your body of work is just so helpful to so many. I'm on LinkedIn under the companies under A6 Financial and Business Optimization, and then under Stacey on LinkedIn. If you're going to connect to me, maybe include the name of the podcast, and then I'll definitely accept. And my website is A6FitBiz, www.a6fitbiz, and it has like all of our fun services. But I love meeting other leaders. I've been sort of fearless with reaching out to some of the podcast hosts that I really adore and follow, and say, and just was something I would have never probably done years ago, to say, I love this episode. Like, you did such a great job with this. Thank you for hosting this and for sharing it with us. And, people are so generous. They actually respond to you, and it's great.
Well, I really appreciate your time. It really makes a difference to me and to my listeners. As we talked about, this is sort of a passion project for me. I love these stories, and you're just an amazing, incredible woman. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.